Chat people, how you doing? So, the video comparison between these two, I guess the best way to put it is that we are setting a very concrete baseline, because we all know that the S23 Ultra, it's essentially one of the most renowned videography devices. It comes in right after the iPhone. It has amazing consistency, amazing quality in general. It's a very good videography device, period. There's no way anyone can honestly debate that. The X90 Pro, on the other hand, it is a photography device, so I'm not exactly having insane high hopes for this, because it would be pointless. What I want to see is just how close it can get to the S23 Ultra, or who knows, the X90 Pro might just bamboozle my ass altogether. If that happens, well, fantastic. I would be a very happy man indeed. Yeah, my happiness doesn't really have much of a cost, no, does it? Alright, so this is selfie video, and let's face it, it's not all that good on the X90 Pro. Now, I am using HDR on the X90. I'm hoping that it gives us, halfway decent dynamic range. And of course, the S23 Ultra, it is still the only one that can give you good, high-quality selfie video, and it's not changing. At least for Android phones, it's really not. Yeah, you can go for the iPhone. That's about the only other option which would give you superior 4K selfie video as compared to the S23. Yeah, but yeah, the X90 is not taking that ground, that's for sure. So the audio quality, I would quite easily say that I liked it a little bit more on the S23 Ultra, simply because it had just a tiny bit more noise reduction, that's it. The X90, actually, it sounded pretty clear to me, but there was a lot of background noise and humming happening, which I preferred that the S23 removed it. Now, the quality, it's a little interesting because you probably saw it as well. The S23 does have 4K, sure, but somehow, with just 1080p, the X90 manages to bring out a lot of detail. Like, yes, there is some noise and grain on both, but the detail and the lack of any smearing, so to speak, on the X90, that's what impressed me, because usually when you have 1080p, I just blatantly think that, okay, it's got 1080p, it's not gonna do anything particularly well. And, well, the X90 is, well, to an extent at least, it is proving me wrong, which, impressive. Like, I have no issue with being wrong about low quality video, right? Also, make sure to use HDR if in case you want to take selfie video on the X90, because it definitely looked a lot better. So rear camera 4K, this is going to be pretty standard as you'd expect. It's going to be pretty good on the X90 regardless, because 4K 30 is basic, and it looks pretty nice. I do like the overall higher contrast and slightly low exposure on the S23. Looks a bit more natural, looks more like how it should have looked at the time of the day. The X90 looks a touch overexposed. Not the biggest fan of that, but to be honest, it's not that big a deal. And what really strikes me is that the X90 looks really detailed. We'll get to details in a moment. And, well, another thing is the focusing. Well, it was fluttering a little bit initially, but yeah, for the most part, you get pretty good focusing. You'll see soon enough. And the depth of field it's bloody insane on the X90. Just that huge sensor with the huge aperture, it's just, it can give you some serious depth of field there. Now the focusing, well, it's good on the X90, plain and simple. It is snappy, it's fast, and very accurate. It's not like it's just pulsating all over the place, and it can focus on close-ups, but not too close, so to speak, because if you get in too close, then I'm not sure if it's a problem with the sensor or not, but seems like because we have the new sensor, much larger sensor, somehow we can get it to focus to really up-close subjects. Now, it's not going to be a big deal with videos, so to speak, because you're probably not going to be getting too up close and personal and taking a video, but in photos sometimes it can be a bit of an issue. Now the S23, as you'd expect, it's got immaculate focusing. I mean, why wouldn't it? And the biggest difference, so to speak, is that the S23 can get in much closer and still maintain focus on small subjects, and that could be useful for some people, but to be honest, it's not the biggest deal in video. Now for HDR video, well, I'm a little surprised by how good the X90 looks, because the S23, it is a little bit darker and it has more contrast. And I mean, that's nice and all, but to be entirely honest, I kind of prefer the X90 in this case. I know, I'm kind of contradicting myself, because just a moment ago I said that the X90 looks overexposed. And well, that's actually helping out in a situation like this. Ideally, you'd still want the look the S23 Ultra gives. It is generally more balanced, but yeah, the X90 is keeping up. That's all I'm saying. With dynamic range, you're not gonna have any issues. There's a good chance a lot of you guys didn't really expect the X90 to keep up with the S23 so well. I know I sure as hell didn't. And well, this is HDR 10 Plus. I must say I'm not a huge fan of how the S23 looks. It's a little too dark, too underexposed, because you can see the X90, it has basically similar levels of highlight preservation, but the amount of detail in the shadows, that is massive as opposed to the S23 here. Now then, for ultrawide video, well, here the only thing that I noticed more than anything else is that not only do we have really good contrast on the X90, I wish we had this level of contrast and exposure balance with the main camera 4K, but yeah, the ultrawide video looks really good. I didn't expect it to look as good because technically we had a bit of a downgrade when you think about the ultrawide cameras, but yeah, in videos it's keeping up. If anything, it's actually doing a better job, because if you look at the road and the textures, it's got a lot more of that going on as opposed to the S23 Ultra, so technically more details are being preserved as opposed to the S23 here. Now, if you want to consider zoom on the S90, there's really not much to consider. You have the ultrawide camera, you have the main camera, and you have the 2x zoom. Now, the 2x zoom is very high quality, no doubt about that, but that's really all you get. It's alright, it's usable, it's not gonna be a massive deal for most people, but when you compare it to the S23 Ultra, it really doesn't stack, now does it? Because the S23 has both a 3x and a 10x. And this 10x, you can use it very easily with video as long as you're standing still. Yes, if you're moving around, like walking around, then it's gonna look horrendous, but otherwise, if you're standing still, you can do bird watching with it, I guess. Now 4K 60, see, initially I was very disappointed that we didn't have 4K 60 ultrawide, but then I realized that we don't really have particularly good 4K 60 either. And that's simply because we have no stabilization. It makes 4K 60 not useful anymore, simply because when you're using 4K 60, the biggest benefit is that yes, you can take the video in 4K, you get the quality, well, most of the quality, and then you can slow it down to 50% and get even more stabilization, you know, get a slow-mo effect, that sort of stuff. Now, if you don't have stabilization to begin with, it's useless compared to normal 4K 30, just use that. And it's unfortunate because the video as such, like a still frame of the video, looks really good. But the video itself, when played back, looks horrendous. And then obviously the S23 can do 4K 60 with the ultrawide camera and with all of the other lenses as well. It's not limited to anything and as such. I think it looks really nice. Of course, there's going to be a bit of a loss in detail, and you know, it's 4K 60 after all. It's kind of maxing things out in a manner of speaking. It's nice to have on the S23, and having it would not have really made a difference on the X90 Pro because, again, no stabilization. Now, speaking of stabilization, of course, we gotta talk about super stable or super steady. The S23 has some of the best super stable video that you can find because it can give us Quad HD plus resolution and extremely good stabilization, and you can get it in 2560p and 60 fps, all that stuff. The Vivo is stuck at 1080p 60. Now 60 is good, but I wish we could go for a higher resolution. But yeah, other than the detail level, it's very close on both. Like the stabilization part is really good. You're not gonna have any issues with the stabilization. Now 8K video, it is exactly as useless as the 4K 60 that we have on the X90 Pro. No stabilization. Now look, I get it. With 8K video, if you are willing to just stand in one place and take a really highly detailed video, it can still make some sense, but it's a very niche situation in which you can use 8K video. So in my opinion, 8K video is not that useful, especially when you compare it to something like the S23 Ultra, which has at this point impeccable 8K video. It has had all of the problems just removed, so it's basically ideal for 8K usage. The X90, yeah, is far from that. Now then, detail preservation. See, this is usually one of my favorite parts because sometimes you can get blown away by the results. I did not think I would get blown away this time, but turns out I was wrong, and boy, have I ever been this glad to be wrong about something. Just take a moment to revel in the details of the X90 Pro. It looks like the S23 is out of focus as compared to the X90. It is that much higher. And no, the X90 is not out of focus. This is a maximum level of detail on the S23. I basically scoped around the frame to check for any other spots that may have been focused on. This was the sharpest on the S23, which is good. Trust me when I say this is a good level of detail. The X90 looks almost extraordinary. I would say this is close to iPhone's level of detail with 4K 30. You know for a fact that's a massive deal, and you know that really makes the X90 Pro probably one of the best for 4K video. Yes, it has a massive downside with 4K 60 and 8K, but this is impressive. Now the ultrawide camera, I kind of expected there to be less detail on the X90 as compared to the S23, namely because of the hardware downgrade that it had. You want to check out the photo comparison, that's where you can really see the downgrade, but in this case I don't think it's really there. The X90 Pro is basically as detailed as the S23 Ultra, no issues whatsoever. It looks good on both, to be entirely honest. The S23's detail preservation in video is actually really good, especially with the ultrawide camera, so the fact that the X90 is keeping up is a very good sign. Now as for 8K, let's be honest, it's not gonna blow anyone's mind because yeah, it's similar in detail levels. Maybe the S23 is a touch sharper, but it doesn't matter. You're not gonna be using 8K. It has no stabilization. It's basically pointless for me to even compare. So I don't know why I'm doing this. Let's move on. Now nighttime video, well, this is a little interesting. So first we have the regular 4K 30, just no modes, nothing. And as you can see, the X90 is suffering a bit more with the stabilization, while the S23 in general has worse levels of detail, more noise, a few more smearing artifacts that I can see. The X90, obviously it has a much larger sensor, so it can gather more light. Because of that, the video just looks brighter, cleaner, more detailed, but the stabilization is a bit of an issue. Having said that, we do have something called night mode video. Now the stabilization doesn't really get better. If anything, I think it gets a touch worse, but let's face it, I wasn't exactly trying my hardest to keep the phone stable. I had just finished off gym and yeah, my hands were sore. So yeah, in this case, I think it's pretty clear that the detail level and the sheer noise reduction on the X90 is unlike anything I've ever seen. Like, this is genuine night mode video. Yes, you can use it with 4K 30, and as long as you can, you know, walk unlike a drunken slob, you're gonna get really good video. It's not gonna be particularly stable, but that's the only downside in this case because the detail level is insane on the X90 Pro. I mean, just look at the detail in the leaves and the noise reduction in the sky. It's amazing. Now there was this another feature that initially when I heard about it, I was like beyond excited. It's called Movie Luts on the X90 Pro, and it basically lets you use these I guess filters to get some really cool looking video. You could use this with night mode initially in many of the other predecessors of the X90 Pro, but now you can use it with video. I was very excited, but then I realized it's 1080p. Now look, 1080p video, it has been defying me on the X90 Pro because the selfie video, despite being 1080p, looked really good. And even in this case, I would say despite not being 4K, it looks really detailed, and it's a nighttime video. So that's impressive, no doubt. But yeah, I wish it was 4K. It just doesn't make sense as to why a filter causes the resolution to drop all the way down to 1080p. It makes no sense to me. Now slow motion, it's very simple. We have 1080p to 40 on both. It looks good on both, and you're not gonna be complaining, but let's face it, man, we are heavily due for an upgrade in the slow motion category. Now, this goes out to every single flagship and every single smartphone manufacturing company out there. We need 4K 120, 4K 240. This 1080p 240, it's been here for far too long. And let me tell you something, 4K 120, the OnePlus 8 Pro was capable of 4K 120. That's 3 bloody generations behind. And we still do not have any general adoption of 4K 120 on devices like the S23 Ultra, the X90 Pro, even the iPhones. The iPhones that pride themselves on video quality don't have 4K 120. Anyways, that's a wrap for this camera comparison. I know I tend to go into a rant whenever we get to slow motion, but it's just sad. But let's talk about the X90 Pro, which was surprising. It was astonishing, very pleasantly, because it did such a good job here. But like the 4K 30 from the main camera, the ultrawide camera, it was solid. It really makes it close to ideal for an Android 4K 30 videography device. It sucks. It bloody sucks that we don't get good 4K 60 or 8K. Like that would have made it ideal. That would have probably came close to dethroning the S23 Ultra. I don't say this lightly, but it could have come close. So yeah, it seems that the X90 can finally do video. No other Vivo flagship has ever had that form of compliment, from me at least, because every other Vivo flagship, it was just a photography device that also had certain video capabilities that you're never gonna use. Now, you're probably gonna end up using the X90 for video and you're gonna be impressed by it. Well, I'll be seeing you guys soon enough with more videos and comparisons to come. Cheers, and do like and subscribe because that really does help me out a lot.